Hi, everybody. Cindy Skalicki here with On Point Communications and our next episode of Getting to the Point, where we bring to you an expert in his or her field to share with you 3 points about what they do. It could be about their journey, about their business, whatever they might want to share. And today I'm so pleased to have Emily Satterlee with me of ItyDity. How are you today, Emily?
Hi, Cindy. I'm super good. I hope it's okay that I'm outside.
I love that you're outside. I wish I could be outside. It's a little chilly here. Where are you calling in from today?
I am in Tennessee, so
Okay.
we have not had snow yet,
Oh,
unlike
I cannot
Colorado.
say the same, right? We are already at two snowfalls and it's only the end of November. So, well, it's great to be with you today. Just to give a quick overview for our viewers of how you and I met. We were just talking offline about how that kind of happened. Oh, I don't know, 3 years ago, probably at least three, at the startup week in Fort Collins here in Colorado when you were just getting off the ground. In fact, I'm going to back that up a little more. I remember your pitch at 1 Million Cups with the very earliest beginnings of ItyDity. So you and I have chatted a lot throughout the years, and I've watched your business just start to grow and mature and emerge. And it's such a unique idea. And it's just been a lot of fun to just kind of watch from the sidelines, I guess, if you will. So, why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about what you do at ItyDity and what your mission is for the music industry?
Sure. So we are a music production marketplace. We help artists and producers connect. It's sort of like a match.com for artists and producers, or if the audience is familiar with 99 Designs, we say we're the 99 Designs of music. So it's the only platform where artists get to test out different producers up front, hear their song in different ways, and then pick their favorite producer to complete this market ready song. So they go from like an idea of a song to a market ready song through our platform.
That's so
And
cool.
the mission is really to empower artists in the space since music production has gone DIY in the last 10 to 20 years and everything's kind of happening inside of people's homes and living rooms and bedrooms. There's no regulation or structure or oversight or kind of third party guidance for both artists and producers to create like a streamlined process for this to work efficiently. And so
Mhm.
that's what we aim to provide.
That's so cool. So on one side of the coin, you've got the producers who might have a song and it's written, but they need the voice or the instrument or whatever piece they need to fill so they can complete the piece, right? Or the song. And on the other side, you've got the artists. Maybe they're a vocalist, maybe they are an instrumentalist or whatnot, and they're looking for work. And so you find a way to match these two and have kind of like a tryout, right? Do you still, what's the platform like, just in basic terms?
Yeah, there's still that audition process. It's changed a little bit between it used to be kind of open auditions where any producer could come on and pitch a spec to an artist. But now we've curated the process a little bit. There's a little bit more vetting on our end of producers that we allow on the platform, and then
Okay.
artists get to kind of navigate and filter through producers before it gets to that spec work phase.
Okay.
Um, but there still are producers who are trying out.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Very cool. Well, I think what we planned to kind of go through today is more like a timeline and maybe like a little bit about, your early times getting started with Itty Ditty and having never really done anything like this before that I'm aware of, right? And when I met you, you were right at that very beginning phase. And I know right now you're in Tennessee for in part for an accelerator that you're participating in, and I know how there's been a lot of growth, and I'm sure you have a lot of plans for the future. So we'll just kind of cover that span of time. Why don't you take us back to the beginning, Emily? What was happening when this idea came to be, and how was your time here in Northern Colorado amplified by your idea? What was going on?
Yeah, so I had never done a startup before and actually didn't know the term startup or really entrepreneur even. So I definitely did not get into this to like have that kind of coveted term of being able to call myself an entrepreneur, being able to say I have a startup, because I didn't even really know that that's what I was getting into. I had done entrepreneurial type things in the past in this industry and in this niche of connecting artists with producers. I had actually been doing that for like 10 years.
Okay.
In Southern California, I would be matching artists with producers in the studio. I led one of the largest songwriters meetups in Southern California where we did just that. We had song contests, we matched them with producers. So a lot of the stuff, like looking back,
Hmm.
I realize now kind of led me to this. But in terms of like, oh, wow, what if I built this at scale? And what if I made this solution
Right.
available to everyone? That was a very new thing. And I had never attempted anything like that before. So I started to talk to people about it, and I kind of made a short little animated video
Hmm. I
and
remember
passed
that
it.
video. I loved that video.
My friend is an artist in Denver, and he's usually a sculptor, but he did some sketches for me. So that's where that came from. And I like chopped it up, and I mean, it took me hours and hours to put it, like I tried to animate it myself. So yeah, I started showing that around, and pretty immediately, like in the first week of me, having these sketches of this idea, I had someone tell me, you should go to Startup Week in Fort Collins, and actually created like a list of things for me to go to. One of those was something about marketplaces, which again, like I had no idea it was a marketplace. I'm like, why would I go to that? And another one was the RVC Pitch Academy workshop. Um, and I didn't know what that was until I got there. Um,
What
so
was that
yeah,
like, Emily? Are you just sitting there like, what were you feeling like? This is crazy, or I love this. I can totally do this, or what is going on? Is this where has this part of like society been and that I never knew was there? Like, what were you thinking?
mm. Yeah, I don't know that I at the time I was able to put it all together, digest like I was learning and what I was absorbing, but I did what I was all I was thinking was when it was Dave who was leading the workshop
Hmm.
and going through like, what would be in a typical deck. And I was thinking, I kind of have this stuff. I actually had
Okay.
like kind of had slides, and I had a MVP platform, like the homepage of what it would look like. And then I had those like animated like how-to videos. And after the session ended, I didn't have the guts to go up in front because they offered
Yeah,
a
I know. Yeah,
pitch, we'll
totally.
critique it, and like, I couldn't do that. I mean, I'd never done any of this before. But
So,
after the session, I waited around and I approached Dave on the side, and I was like, can I show you like my
mhm.
idea and my sketches and stuff? And so what I kind of got was like that I had been doing a lot of these things from just common sense or from my gut, and that
Yeah.
it was nice to know though that there is a structure that I can go
Right.
follow
It
to
was
enhance.
validation of your, not just the idea, but that you have. So I'm thinking in my head of, the puzzle piece that a pitch deck is, and how you were sitting in the audience, of Dave's Pitch Academy, and thinking, oh, I've got a piece that fits here, and I've got one that goes over here, and I can fill that slot with my data points over here. And that's how I think about pitch decks, and that's how when I'm teaching groups of people, and we sit down and put the puzzle pieces together. So it must have been a great feeling to know you had, that it wasn't, maybe the concept of pitch decks was a little bit foreign, but you were already thinking along those lines, and now you could just stick it into that formula and start sharing it, which is what you did, right? You ended up making it really pretty far. Was it the following year, Emily, that you got through and did
Yep.
the actual competition?
Yes. Yep. Because
Okay.
I remember watching the pitches that first year,
Yes.
thinking like this could be me next year. Yeah.
Right. And it was.
Yeah, and it was.
That's awesome. And
So
what
yeah, I guess
happened? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
in between that year and the next year, I started to do 1 million cups.
Yeah.
So I refined the deck a little bit. Now looking back, like I wish I would have known then that what was going on was I was just needing to kind of validate the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's what my deck was at that time, and that's what I was doing. But any kind of first time entrepreneur starting out, and then you kind of get into the world, and you're like, oh, should I be thinking about fundraising? And
Right.
uh, I wish that I had just been more. My expectations were set right for that time.
Mm.
Um, because and it was fine that, like, I'm so glad I never got early funds, like, that's
Right.
been the best thing that ever happened to me, but I just wish I could have been more focused at that time on pitching to validate the idea, because I
Okay.
think if I had those expectations, like, I just would have been more open and receptive to the feedback and tailoring the messaging the right way. I mean,
Right.
it all worked out the way it worked out, but,
So what
um
were you pitching for, Emily? If you were not pitching to validate the idea at that time and you're glad were you pitching for funding and didn't get it, or were you pitching for another purpose?
I think I was, pitching to be validated with funds.
Okay.
You know
Okay.
what I mean? And instead, I became validated with, like, this is I see this too, and I would win pitch competitions, and so
Yeah.
that's what was happening is and I would
Yep.
win over people that had revenue before we had
Right.
revenue.
Yep.
So that's what was happening is I was getting validation. I just wish that I knew that that's what I needed at the time and that
Right.
I could have been more focused on that, I guess.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So take us a little further along to, how you arrived where you are. What's happening now? What's going on right at this moment for ItyDity, and what are you, what are some of your lessons learned, and how are you preparing for, first quarter next year? What's going on with ItyDity right now?
So I feel like it's about 4 years since that startup week.
Okay.
So now I feel like we are really close to product market fit.
Great.
Um, we've worked with 20 artists, we have hundreds of producers on the platform. I'm also the CTO, so I feel like, there's a huge part of me that feels like we could be further along with revenue.
Mhm.
But
Mm.
that balance of, being able to support the customers we do have and then doing the R&D and reiterating the platform has been, what we have been spending most of the time on for the
Mhm.
last years. Um, but also now like I said, I feel like we're approaching product market fit and that we've built something that can scale.
Yeah.
Uh, the one thing that was helpful of, like, learning about pitch decks so early and just kind of that whole world was I've always been building this to scale. Like, I
Mhm.
always have known that this isn't a lifestyle company, that this is, something that I feel like wants to make a land grab. It wants to be big,
Right.
and we've been building it so that when that tipping point happens, our technology can handle it.
Right.
uh,
Okay. Okay.
and also that we can make that tipping point happen by building a brand. So
Right.
we've really been focused on the messaging of the company, what we stand for, and the branding in all aspects, including, like, colors and fonts and the feel
Sure.
and the emotion of the brand.
All that storytelling comes into it, all happens constantly wherever you are. People are making up their minds, right? About what you are, what you stand for, how you feel about it. How do you feel when you take in itty ditty, no matter where you are? So it's a really interesting world that we live in that's all digital all the time, and everybody encounters so many brands throughout their days all the time, and so it's just constantly trying to finesse find those points and make sure that you are delivering on that that brand personality that you want to, that meets the customer need, right? So that's an exciting
And
place to be, and it's fun.
that can't be duplicated or copied either.
Right.
Like, I
Right.
really feel like we have something that is all our own, especially in this industry, where everything is male owned and male run.
Yes, I love that. Mhm. That's
Yeah, and that has value too. And so now we're at this point where we are considering raising again, and we have
okay.
been going out pitching for funding. And we kind of have to justify, but also realistically assess the value of our company at this point
Right,
because
right.
we haven't been focused on revenue very much at this
Mhm.
point. We were focusing on all these other aspects of building the technology and getting the product right,
Yeah.
from those tiny beta tests and the small batch customers we have worked with.
Mhm.
Um, and I think all of that's very valuable, everything I just said with the brand and the team and the
Sure.
product. So, but revenue is king when it comes to putting a value on the company
Mhm.
typically.
Mhm.
So it's really just a matter of what we're willing to that price tag that we're willing to put on the company and
Yeah,
whether or not we feel we have to raise right now.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's an exciting place to be, no matter what kind of the road looks like in the next, little while here. But one thought I wanted to ask was, I remember when you first were bringing the idea out, you had already had some people who had used the platform and gone ahead and recorded. Where is that now, Emily? What kind of participation and um, success stories have come out of people who've used ItyDity? What can you share with us today about that?
Yeah, yeah, we had customers pretty much out of the gate, and then, so we ran these beta tests in batches of 4, so it was always 4 artists each time. The, life cycle of the production process is about 8 weeks, and so
Okay.
we would have those 4 customers, we'd kinda turn off the valve of outreach, or which we haven't really done much outreach at all anyway, but, you know, really just focused on that, and doing a lot of customer discovery. So how the product has kind of developed through that process, a lot of things. So
Mhm.
one is how I talked before about the refining of how many producers are involved in a project. We realized that there doesn't need to be that many producers involved as
Okay.
long as we kind of give the artists the power up front to filter and sort through those candidates.
Mhm.
So that's one thing, and producers really, um, that has helped us get the producers on too,
Sure.
like narrowing down that process before anyone's putting in spec work. The biggest thing that's come out of it, and it's actually taken up the whole last year of our time, is creating this data-driven technology
Yeah.
that helps artists discover who they are as an artist, what they want
Mhm.
for their music, what instruments, elements, genres, effects match their tastes. So we
Right.
basically kind of present the artist with a questionnaire, we assess their preferences, and then we can kind of give them this blueprint of who they are as an artist. We work with a lot of one of the things through R&D is really narrowing who that target is too, right?
Mhm.
So we work with a lot of developing artists who
Okay.
need that support, who need help figuring themselves out. And then on the flip side, the producers also love that we do this discovery because usually that's the burden on their shoulders. And they're often, it drags out the production process and takes a lot more time and money if the artist doesn't come to the table knowing who they are.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking back to the days when I would sit in the sound booth at doing radio scripts and radio spot recordings at the ad agency where I worked. And I wasn't a part of the creative selection process, but it's very similar where you're looking at different voices and you're looking at different, styles and expertise and experience and previous work. And so if you already have some of that curated for you, it can be such a huge efficiency on the producer's side of things. And then you're also really helping these artists come into their own more by providing that reflective exercise for them to say, well, where's your heart? What's your personal brand, right? As far as who you want to become from the musician standpoint. And that's a really neat thing to be able to do. So I bet that's been very fun and very interesting. Have you gotten a lot of feedback from the artists that they have enjoyed the process and that they have come into a new place they didn't think they would be in, because of the work you've done with them?
Yeah, actually from all levels of artists, especially those developing artists, but what we were really surprised by is this newer artist we've been working with who's a commercial music major out of Belmont University, one of the biggest music programs in the country,
Mhm.
um, said that the results we were able to provide her from this kind of simple questionnaire were things that, she'd spent months and years on in school trying to get to the
Wow.
bottom of.
Yeah.
And she said especially, like, today that musicians and artists just have such a wide variety of
Mhm.
influences, that it's really hard to tailor it down and condense it down into, one style for them. So, yeah, the feedback's been great, and actually it's kind of become its own monster. We just released it last week as we packaged it up as it's called Music and Me by ItyDity. It's kind of like
Okay.
23 and Me or a genealogy
Yeah,
chart
cool. Oh,
for your
so cool. I love
musical
it.
makeup. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Wow. Well,
So
what
I
a
would say,
cool
like,
place
just
to
as,
be.
like, a broad thing, not related to Dity, but just for, like, entrepreneurs, like, I feel like this this piece might be such a great marketing piece for us, or just might become like could become like part of the core product. And
Right.
you just have to follow your gut, and you don't know like how it's gonna change and morph.
Mhm.
But you just get so much outside feedback from people. People were
Mhm.
telling me, I was trying to do too much,
Mhm.
but you just have to really be on the ground with your customers, listening to your customers, and then
Yeah.
trusting your gut.
Emily, have you always felt really open-minded when it comes to feedback? You seem to have always been that way since I've known you, but I can tell just by your insights that you've had to really, evaluate so many different people's pieces of feedback and perspectives. Is that something, and I know that's hard for people, especially artists or writers or creative people. What do you say to people out there that are in the places that you have been, and is that something you had to learn along the way, or was that just something you always had and you were glad about it?
The ability to listen to feedback.
Yeah, to take feedback well and apply it, or graciously, um, not reject it, but, thank you, but, and then just knowing it wasn't core to you or something like that.
I think that I don't know, it's hard to have, like, that perspective on myself,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
I do think, like, I feel like you would probably know more if I'm about my ability to be coached than I would. I don't like, I am receptive at times, and at other times, I do feel like, "No, you're wrong, and I'm gonna do it the other way." So, I do
Right.
think I have good common sense,
Mhm.
and I think, yeah, I think I'm and hopefully some self-awareness, and I think that those 2 things are, really important. I think it also helps that, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, so
Mhm.
I'm really familiar with the industry and the
Mhm.
problems,
Mhm.
and so I feel like I always have to take that into consideration if someone who's not so familiar with those problems is trying to give
Right.
me advice.
Well, and to your point, I talk a lot about mastery, and it doesn't always have to be of a message. It can be of an industry. It can be of an instrument. It can be of mastery in itself is a something we all want to achieve, whatever industry we're in. But you have brought with you that mastery of the industry, of the music industry, and so much experience that with that came confidence in what you wanted to do and a clarity of vision that I think a lot of startup founders might not always have at the start. And so I think you came into this, at least just from watching a lot of people do what you are doing, with a little more to stand on than the inflatable raft, if you will. And that's been that level of confidence that just is part of you has been evident since I have come across you. And I do find you open to feedback when we've traded, tips on startup week keynotes or whatever you were working on. You've always been really open. It just seems that's a very important thing to be when you're taking so much feedback constantly about your baby, your idea. So, well, what's going on for ItyDity coming up? What kinds of things are on the horizon for the next, 6 months or 12 months? Looks like you're knee deep in customer and data information and personas and branding. What's the exciting thing you're kind of looking at and you can't wait to get there?
We really want to finally put our focus on customers and revenue. And I think
Okay.
that, so to do that, we're bringing on a marketing person,
Okay,
um,
cool.
and who's from Fort Collins,
Oh, good.
uh, and she's amazing.
Great.
So, really trying to so we've kind of worked out these lower level tiers, these more affordable products for
Mhm,
artists that they can start off with before they have to go to that full package, which is like an
mhm,
$800 production package. So,
mhm.
and that's all kind of new. So that's part of the go to market, and that's what we're excited about. One of those things is the Music and Me product,
Mhm.
and really finally kind of taking advantage of all of these potential partners we've been building relationships with over the years,
Great.
and establishing some affiliate networks. and pushing that product out. We're really excited about that, and excited about the new marketing person we're bringing on. So
Yeah,
really, the goal um, is to get revenue up in the next 6 months, and that really I know that that's such a typical goal of a startup, but we
it's
really have
true
never
though.
had that as our number one goal, which maybe is backwards. I don't know, but we are where we are,
Yep,
and we feel like it's the right time. I think COVID is only, there's a artistic renaissance going on right now. Everyone's at home.
right. Such an
Uh,
interesting time. Right, exactly. That's
so
great.
that's what we're looking forward and two, and the accelerator that we're in isn't finished. It goes until March. So there's a lot of stuff to still look forward to
Mhm.
with them. And we have our investor night. We had a showcase night last month, but then we have like an investor night in
Yep,
January. Um,
cool.
so yeah.
Well, I know you'll nail it because you always do, Emily. So you'll have to keep us posted on what's happening with the end of the accelerator and as you get closer to the bigger, landmarks that you're looking at for ItyDity. That's super exciting. So what if people are watching and they're an artist or a producer and they want to get in touch? Give us your website real quick. And is the Music and Me at the website? Is it something that you purchase? What's the story there?
Yeah, it's on the homepage of the website now. So if you go to ittydity.com, it's at the bottom of the homepage. Um, and there's a pop-up too, so you can't miss it.
Okay.
And so that's out. Yeah, if you are a producer, any producer can join right now. Will still we're still interviewing you after you sign up, but if you're interested, that's the way to kind of get in touch with us.
Cool.
And then artists, yeah, try
Same
out the
thing.
Music in Me, I would say, is a great place to start.
Mhm.
That's where you're going to start anyway. We kind of take your results from Music in Me, and then if you move forward, that's what puts you on the path to production. So if you're
Okay.
interested in having a song produced, it's kind of where you start, getting that blueprint and then moving forward.
So cool. I love it. It's such a neat, like you said, it's like a 360-degree look at a person. And it's really valuable to stop and do that no matter what kind of industry you're in. So that's really exciting. Well, congratulations on so many great successes, Emily, since we've last talked. We miss you here in Fort Collins, although we miss everybody because we can't really hang out much anyway. It wouldn't matter if you were here, we still would be able to hang out. So,
I know.
well, I would like to quickly run through a couple of fun questions. I call them rapid fire questions. Can you tell us, number one, tell us about a mentor who really had a lasting impact on you, whether it was someone from your youth, a family member, grandparent, a teacher, a musician, who has kind of, and it could be recent, anybody that's really, had a lasting impact on you. Who would that
Mhm.
be?
Well, just because you said grandparent, and my grandfather passed away a few days
Oh,
ago.
I'm sorry.
Um, I
Okay,
know, and so I guess that just is top of mind, because
sure.
I have been thinking a lot of over the last few days about how impacted we are by our grandparents and kind of generational impact that we don't really realize.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a farmer, and I grew
Okay.
up on the farm that he built,
Oh, you
and
did? Wow.
yeah,
Where?
in Michigan.
Okay.
So he
Cool.
passed it down to my mom.
Hmm.
And when my mom took over, she kind of outsourced a lot of the work.
Hmm.
So I didn't have to get up and milk cows like she did. Um, but I was around that my whole life. I mean, we had tractor rides when we were young and around like the whole mentality of like waking up early. And a
Yeah.
lot of those sayings were always around my grandparents' house and the farmhouse I grew up in about, early to rise,
Yes.
um, gets the worm or
Early
whatever.
bird gets the worm. Yep.
So that was always, I think, like I've been thinking a lot about how deeper the roots are of my entrepreneurship than I realized. So
Oh, that's so interesting. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure that your family will love to hear that. And we wish them all well. What about for your second question? We usually do a book that you might be reading or a podcast, something you might be learning about. Do you have a book on your proverbial nightstand that you'd like to tell us that you're reading and a tip from it, or just something fun from it? It doesn't have to be nonfiction. I've had a guest that was reading Harry Potter and we talked Harry Potter. So what do you got going on that you're
gosh,
doing?
I should definitely put time aside in my life to read fiction books. But um, I don't. I love memoirs. The last book, I haven't read a book in a couple months, but the last book I read, actually reread, is Tracks by Robin Davidson. I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar.
I'm
It's a
not. No.
true story about a woman who trekked across the Western Australian desert.
Oh my God.
And it was like in the 70s. It was a big deal, covered by National Geographic. And she was totally underqualified, had never done anything like that before. So it's
Oh,
her telling this journey of like being compelled to do something that everyone said was crazy, and how
wow.
she went about it to learn the skills, and acquire the resources to do it. It's a really, really good book. And one of the things in it too is like when she ended up taking outside money from National Geographic. And so it's also what really resonated with me about that book is the transition that you have as a startup from having this personal journey that's all your
Mhm.
own to something that kind of the world is watching, and that can,
Mm.
and just knowing that, just the awareness that there is a shift there that needs to kind of be nurtured. And
Wow.
yeah.
That sounds like I'm going to put that on my list. Tracks, Tracks, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh wow. I can see that you would probably find, and that any entrepreneur would probably find, so many similarities in, that journey of hers, and being unprepared and needing to figure it out as you go. And the analogies are probably endless. So that's a very cool find. I'll have to add that to my list. I might put it on my Christmas list. We'll see. That's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Emily. This has been so much fun to catch up with you from Tennessee, where it's sunny and warm-ish, it looks.
I
And
wasn't trying to make you jealous, and hopefully it wasn't too bright, but it was really
no,
nice to be outside.
it's perfect. Well, we
Yeah.
wish you the best with the rest of the accelerator. And again, so happy to hear all the great things about ItyDity, that are happening. And there's just so many people out there like you that are watching this right now, wondering if they should keep going, wondering, if this world of pitching is for them, wondering if all the learning that needs to be done is worth it. And so, I'm sure, right, you would say it is. What kind of parting words do you have for those that are watching?
Yeah, it's definitely worth it, and it's not the way that you're gonna grow as a person, that's the reward.
Oh,
Like
awesome. Yep.
like
And
just
that's got to be a whole nother podcast, I would imagine, right?
yeah, and it's very true. So,
Yes, that's
mhm,
that's true in so many ways for all the businesses that start up, and especially the ones that are really high risk and just challenging, and uncharted, right? Uncharted territory. So,
yeah.
well, thanks, Emily. This has been so much fun. I want to thank everyone for watching this episode of Getting to the Point, and we will be back again in another week with a new episode. And until then, we're wishing you happiness and message mastery with whatever you are working on today. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Cindy.
Take care. Bye bye.